What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Circle Flex is here bringing you guys another video, and this time around, we're gonna have no music, no nothing, because we need to get a little bit serious right now. By now, most of you will probably have seen me on the test server yesterday on the Friday, testing out all the new tanks that are coming. It's a fairly big patch with changes to a lot of Russian tanks and a couple of new Russian tanks. And among them is a replacement for the T10. Now, the T10 is not going away. It's going to lead to a new tier 10 that hasn't been revealed yet. But there's a new tank that leads to the IS-7 that we really need to talk about, because this brings forth a design and a problem that is super problematic for the game. No matter at what tier you would put this, but especially on this tier 9, it is a gigantic problem. And I've had an issue with this design before in another tank that has been around for a longer time. But seeing as this is the test server, and they literally asked for feedback on the reveal trailer for the test server, I'm really hoping this video will make it to someone important, and they will realize that this is a fairly freaking bad idea. I'll try to not curse. I'll try to be as, let's say, professional as I can be, whilst talking about the problem. So let's get into it. It is the Object 257, the new tier 9, that's going to lead to the IS-7. Now, what is the problem with this? And that is a problem with any tank that would be implemented that has the same design. It comes down to that it's unpennable in the sight, except for this side bar here. This is space armor that will screw you over as well. And then any tracking shot from any angle will only track and deal no damage. Now, this pretty much goes into every fiber of the way you think about little tanks. If you're peeking around a corner and you shoot a tank that is rushing into you from a correct angle, almost every tank will be tracked and penned, aka done damage to. And then, you're still at an advantage if you have that shot, because if you were side scraping or something, he'll have a harder time pinning you, right? So as you can see, this clip here on Twitch is I'm using the Leo, the tier 10 Leopard with a 268 APCR pen. And I cannot pen the object whatsoever in the sight, except for the little hull above it. And even that has to be at a relatively flat angle. So let's take a look at the armor here as I pause the stream. This is the tank and the collision model. I'll show you the live one as well. And the problem is, as you can see, is that most of the tank doesn't actually exist in a way that you might think it does. And the problem with this is this V-shaped hull armor. Now, the Russians were pretty fond of this, and they tried this out quite a bit in a lot of tanks post World War II, and it's a good design, and that's the way the tank was. This is not some made-up vehicle. I believe this is actually the blueprint of it, and you can see how crazy well armored and sloped the side of the tank is. Now, I'm not exactly sure if this is the 257 or like a cousin of it. But you can see that it's not a made-up design. This is how the Russians made some of the tanks. And that is cool. Historical aspect, absolutely fine. The problem comes in is when you implement it to a game where everyone is ingrained that in how tracking shots and damaging shots work. And the problem also comes forth from, big guns being only able to track it. Imagine you're a Yak Panzer, you shoot this in the front sprocket, you will still likely bounce, like it's at those extreme angles. So I get that it's from an historical point of view that it's fine, but from a gameplay, World of Tanks player base point of view, this is completely broken. All right. So what you get now is that no matter where you shoot the tracks, you will never damage it. As far as I know, you will always bounce. All right. We've been shooting it with the tier 10 Leo 268 APCR pen. And the heat obviously doesn't work because it's all space armor. Now, is the tank OP because of this? Pretty much, yes. Not only is it a really freaking good side-scraping machine now, it's still good hull down. Now, a lot of people say, well, it has weak spots on the turret, or it has a weak turret. It doesn't. If you're fighting this thing on equal ground, it is incredibly hard to hit this one little seam with any gun. And you have to remember, this is a tier 9. There's going to be tanks that are going to fight this tank that have no first stabs on mediums, for example. Um, there's going to be tier 7s. Tiger P is going to come up to this. How are you going to beat it? You cannot pen it frontally. You can barely aim for the weak spot. And remember, these tanks are going to be moving up, down, sideways, whatever. And they're going to be side scraping beasts as well because of the way the armor is done. And the only way to pen it is literally in the back, and the lower plate is still almost 200. And the fun thing about the lower plate as well is that the lower plate is actually pretty tiny. Like, this is not a gigantic lower plate. Like, most of the lower plates you will see at these tiers are pretty big, flat kind of lower plates, And obviously it has the pike nose, but the pike nose itself is also really good. Look at this frontally, it's 280, 270. And then when they start poorly angling like this, yeah, you can shoot it in the turret there. But again, you're fighting an enemy that is moving and everything. And it can charge you pretty much in a situation. If this tank actually goes for you, it can charge you in such a way that if you track it, which would be beneficial because you stop it and it might not shoot you back, but then you only tracked it, so you haven't done damage yet. And if he does damage in return, you're now wasting a shot tracking it. And if you have a long reload, he might actually get his tracks back, and then you're in trouble because then you're one shot behind, yada yada. So having this design is extremely poor to have in Mortal Tanks. Again, I get that it's in the game, but it's been pretty much proven to be completely broken because it goes against every fiber of what you've learned whilst playing Mortal Tanks. Right? Everybody that plays Mortal Tanks by tier 9 and 10, and this is probably the overestimate because some people won't learn anything, but they will learn that shooting a tank in the frontal sprocket thing will also do damage. Now, where have we seen this problem before? And is in the 907, which has a similar design. I don't know if you can tell, but it has the extremely this crazy armor. And in the back, if you look here, it's a little bit hard to tell with the colors, but it also has this V hole behind it as well. And the fun thing here is that the lower plate that you see on the live visual, let's take a look here. On the live visual, it looks like a completely lower plate, but the truth is that this is still a V-shaped design. So if you shoot it here, you will never ever pen. It will just be absorbed by no armor. Same goes for the sides. It has these, let's call them toolboxes, that make it look like it's a bit more flat than it really is. Because if you go to the live angles here, it's extremely well angled. And that's the problem whilst facing 907s, is that 9 out of 10, and probably 10 out of 10 people that are fighting 907s don't know this. Now, the reason why I don't think this has been as much as a controversy as the 257 will be is because this is a clan wardsper tank at tier 10, which means you don't see too many of these leading to oh, that silly 907 killed me, and I somehow couldn't pen it, but whatever, and I load up the next game and I don't see one again. I've always said that this is one of the most overpowered tanks in the game currently, and this is also the reason why almost every Clan Wars player that can choose a tier 10 tank as a reward at the end of a campaign, their first tank will almost always be the 907, unless they're ill-informed, basically. And now, being on the test server with the 257, we have a tier 9 with an even more ridiculous hull design that I think will lead to nothing but frustration on how to deal with these vehicles. The other problem is that this V-shape just doesn't work in this game. It's extremely frustrating to play against. And like if, for example, as well, if we take a look at the tier 10 that it leads to, the tier 10 Soviet heavy here, the IS-7 is what it leads to. If you take a look at the armor model here, it is a relatively flat lower plate. It's still good armor, like don't get me wrong, but the hull is not the V shape at all. So it comes, the hull on the 257, apart from the frontal upper, could be considered a better hull than the IS-7. If I shoot an IS-7 in the back here, it will track it and do damage. And at some angles, I can still, like the IS-7, as you can see, has also some weird things here where you can shoot it frontally and not do damage. But a lot of these shots that you will hit in like let's say the second half of this road wheel will track it and do damage. If you take a look at, I don't know, the tier 8 on the Russians, like I can keep going on and on, but just to prove a little bit of a point, the IS-3, if I shoot it in the front wheel, I will track it and do damage. If I shoot it in the back wheel, I will track it and do damage. We've learned this for years and years and years. This works on almost every tank. There's some oddities out there. And the one I found so far is, for example, the ARL-44, where if you shoot it in the frontal wheels, it will just track and deal no damage. The thing is, though, the rest of the tank is cheese, and you will easily be able to pet it regardless, and it's at tier 6. So besides from a couple of oddities, this V-shaped hull is just a design. It's not a numbers thing. You cannot lower the armor and make it correct, right? It's just the actual design of a V-shaped hull has no place in this game as far as I'm concerned. And I really think that they should think of another replacement for the 257. And I think for now, because obviously they want to have this patch out in a couple of weeks, I think for now, considering you're not making another tank after the T10 for now, I think you can just leave the T10 where it is, because as you said in your own video, announcing the test server, is that the T10 is a vehicle that people like very, very much. Just leave that in for now. Leave that into the next batch. Don't put in the Object 257. I would highly, highly recommend not putting any of these designs in the game ever, because you're just going to run into the same problem. Because all these Russian tanks, all these Russian heavies, usually, as far as I know, have really good frontal armor as well. So it's going to be, I think personally, being also at tier 9 and meeting tier 7s and 8s on a regular basis, I simply do not think that this is a balanced tank in any aspect ever. And I've been playing since 2012, and I legitimately think this is the worst, most unbalanced tank I've seen trying to be implemented onto the game since 2012. There's a lot of other issues. There's a lot of other tanks that are OP and stuff like this, but none of them go against each and every fiber of your being and all your knowledge of the game like this tank. All right. And I just wanted to make this clear, because I literally think it is bad for the game to introduce this tank, and I think it's bad for the game to introduce these V-shaped hulls. And hopefully you'll listen to my pleas, and hopefully you will just keep the T10 where it is for now. And yeah, at the end of the day, I just really hope he never put in these V-shaped hulls. I know they're historical. I know they actually existed. I know there's even more extreme designs than this probably. And I just wanted to make this video. I'm not going to monetize it or anything. I'll put it up in public on YouTube, just for the sake of visibility and hopefully gathering more attention among the Wargaming itself. And I will be sending this video link directly to the Wargaming people that I know. And hopefully I can get them to change their mind, or me and you, the viewer, can change their minds. But that's it for me today, guys. As I said, I'm not going to run any ads. This is not for publicity's sake. This is purely from a community perspective, from a new player's perspective, from an old player's perspective. Please do not introduce these V-shaped hulls because they're not cool. And before you tell me that, well, we gave it a good hull, but at least we gave it a weak turret, this turret is not weak, all right? It has like a weak spot. It is not a weak turret. So before we get into that little side note there. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next video. And let me know what you think. And let Wargaming know what you think. Peace out, everyone.